In the early 2000s, before the world knew him as 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson was just another hungry rapper trying to make it in New York's cutthroat hip-hop scene. Fresh off surviving 9 gunshot wounds in 2000, he was getting back to work, taking any opportunity that came his way. That's when Jennifer Lopez, then dating Sean Diddy Combs, suggested that the young rapper could work as a ghostwriter for Bad Boy Records. It seemed like a golden opportunity, working with one of the most successful moguls in hip-hop history. But from their very first interactions, something felt off to 50 Cent. Where other artists saw glamour and opportunity in Diddy's world, 50 Cent sensed danger. The parties, the lifestyle, the way Diddy carried himself, it all triggered alarm bells. When Diddy would call his phone, 50 Cent would instruct whoever answered to say he wasn't available. He had no interest in hanging out, partying, or getting deeper into Diddy's circle. "I didn't want to ever party or hang out with him," 50 Cent would later recall. This wasn't about jealousy or competition, it was about survival instincts honed on the streets of Queens. 50 Cent recognized something predatory in Diddy's approach, something that made him uncomfortable on a fundamental level. While other artists were drawn to the bad boy lifestyle like moths to a flame, 50 Cent kept his distance, even when it meant potentially limiting his career opportunities. Their professional relationship was brief and transactional. 50 Cent would later describe Diddy not as a producer but as someone who took advantage of the business and the creatives in it, someone who got credit for work others had done. This early assessment would prove prophetic, as 50 Cent began to see patterns that others either missed or chose to ignore. The seeds of their decades-long conflict were planted in these early encounters. What started as professional wariness would evolve into something much more significant, a public crusade that would span 20 years, multiple social media platforms, and eventually, a federal courtroom. 50 Cent had recognized the wolf in sheep's clothing before anyone else was willing to admit it existed. The sterile fluorescent lights of the federal courthouse in Manhattan cast harsh shadows as Capricorn Clark took the witness stand. For 14 years, she had been more than just an employee, she had been a witness to Sean Combs' true nature, rising from assistant to head of marketing for Sean John while navigating an increasingly dangerous professional relationship. Clark's testimony began with what seemed like a routine work story but quickly descended into something far more sinister. She described how Diddy discovered her previous connection to Death Row Records through Suge Knight, a rival he despised. The revelation triggered a response that would haunt her for years. Late one evening, Diddy and his security team took her to Central Park, away from witnesses, away from cameras, away from safety. "He told me he didn't know that I had anything to do with Suge Knight," Clark testified, her voice steady but carrying the weight of years of fear. "And if anything happened, he would have to kill me." The courtroom fell silent. This wasn't hyperbole or industry tough talk, this was a death threat delivered with the cold calculation of someone who had crossed that line before. But Clark's testimony revealed an even more chilling pattern. She described an MTV press event where both Diddy and 50 Cent were present, a collision of two worlds that would prove explosive. After the cameras stopped rolling, in the confined space of an elevator, Diddy delivered another threat, this time directed at 50 Cent through his manager Chris Lighty. Puff told Chris, because they were having some sort of issue, "I really don't like all the back and forth. I don't do that. I like guns," Clark recounted. The prosecutor pressed for clarification. "What's the issue with the individual?" Clark's response was simple but devastating. He had an issue with 50 Cent. The testimony painted a picture of a man who used fear as currency, who believed his power and influence made him untouchable. Clark's words echoed through the courtroom, validating years of speculation and giving voice to the terror that had been whispered about in industry circles for decades. As the trial progressed, a disturbing portrait emerged of systematic exploitation, hidden behind the glitz and glamour of celebrity culture. Witnesses described a world where Diddy's legendary parties served as carefully orchestrated hunting grounds, designed to blur the lines between entertainment and coercion. The real parties, witnesses testified, began only after the photographers left and the phones were confiscated. What started as typical celebrity gatherings would transform into something far more sinister once the public eye was removed. Industry insiders described an atmosphere of manufactured intimacy, where vulnerability was weaponized and consent became negotiable. Former employees and associates painted a picture of Diddy as a master manipulator who understood exactly how to exploit the power dynamics of the entertainment industry. Young artists, desperate for career advancement, found themselves in compromising situations where saying no could mean professional suicide. The message was clear: play along, or disappear. Those who resisted faced swift and silent retaliation. Promising careers would mysteriously stall, industry connections would dry up, and opportunities would evaporate without explanation. The fear wasn't just of physical violence, though that threat was always present, but of professional assassination, of being blacklisted by one of the industry's most powerful gatekeepers. Witnesses described seeing guests at these exclusive gatherings who looked uncomfortable, nervous, as if they didn't want to be there but felt they had no choice. The atmosphere was described as predatory, with Diddy allegedly using his mansion's layout to create isolated spaces where normal social boundaries ceased to exist. The testimony revealed a culture of enablement that extended far beyond Diddy himself. Security guards who looked the other way, assistants who made the arrangements, industry executives who provided the guest lists, all complicit in maintaining a system that prioritized profit and power over human dignity. This wasn't just about one man's actions, it was about an entire ecosystem that had been designed to protect predators and silence victims, a system that had operated in plain sight for decades while the music industry celebrated its success. The courtroom fell silent as federal prosecutors prepared to present the evidence that would demolish decades of carefully constructed public relations. The hotel surveillance footage, grainy but unmistakable, showed Sean Combs in his most vulnerable and violent moment, a moment he thought no one would ever see. The video began innocuously enough: a hotel hallway, the kind of mundane setting that exists in thousands of properties worldwide. But what unfolded next shattered every denial, every legal maneuver, every carefully crafted statement that had protected Diddy's reputation for years. The footage showed him chasing his then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura down the corridor, his movements aggressive and predatory. What followed was a brutal assault that prosecutors alleged had cost Diddy $50,000 to initially suppress. The video showed him physically attacking Cassie, grabbing her, throwing her to the ground, and dragging her back toward his room. The violence was raw, unfiltered, and undeniable. This wasn't the polished image of a successful businessman, this was the reality behind the facade. When the video surfaced publicly, it triggered a cascade of revelations that would reshape the entire case. Victims who had been silenced through non-disclosure agreements found their voices, knowing that their stories would now be believed. The footage provided the credibility that had been missing from years of whispered accusations and dismissed allegations. Diddy's response was swift but hollow. A public apology video, carefully scripted and professionally produced, appeared on his social media accounts. But the damage was irreversible. Notably, the apology never mentioned Cassie by name. Legal experts suggested this was due to restrictions in their settlement agreement, a detail that only highlighted the calculated nature of his damage control. The hotel video became more than just evidence. It became a symbol of how power and wealth had been used to hide the truth. It represented every covered-up incident, every silenced victim, every witness who had been intimidated into silence. The grainy footage had accomplished what years of legal battles couldn't. It had stripped away the illusion and revealed the predator beneath the celebrity. The federal charges against Sean Diddy Combs, racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution, represented more than just the downfall of a music mogul. They marked a seismic shift in how the entertainment industry would confront its culture of silence and complicity. As the trial unfolded, the ripple effects spread far beyond the defendant's table. Record labels that had partnered with Bad Boy Records found themselves answering uncomfortable questions about what they knew and when they knew it. Media outlets that had celebrated Diddy's success for decades were forced to examine their role in perpetuating a system that protected predators while silencing victims. The case exposed the intricate web of enablement that had allowed systematic abuse to flourish. Lawyers who had crafted non-disclosure agreements, publicists who had managed crisis communications, and executives who had looked the other way while profits flowed all found themselves under scrutiny. The industry's house of cards, built on willful ignorance and financial incentives to stay silent, was finally collapsing. Legal experts predicted the case would establish new precedents for holding entertainment moguls accountable, regardless of their wealth or influence. The charges demonstrated that federal prosecutors were willing to pursue complex racketeering cases against powerful figures, signaling a new era of accountability in the music business. Industry organizations began implementing new protocols for reporting misconduct, while talent agencies and record labels developed clearer guidelines for protecting vulnerable artists. The transformation was swift and comprehensive, driven by the recognition that the old system of covering up scandals was no longer sustainable. The trial also highlighted the courage of survivors who had come forward despite enormous personal and professional risks. Their testimonies, validated by concrete evidence like the hotel surveillance footage, provided a roadmap for other victims to find their voices and seek justice. What had begun as a hip-hop rivalry between two New York natives had evolved into a landmark case that would reshape the entertainment industry for generations to come. The federal courthouse in Manhattan had become ground zero for a reckoning that was decades overdue, proving that no amount of money, fame, or influence could indefinitely shield predators from the consequences of their actions.